Shedeur Sanders ignores team warnings for Cleveland Community League. They told him to shut up and play. Instead, he walked into burning homes and made the people, not the press, his priority.
Of course, everybody know about the situation, everything that happened here, and I was out of town when it happened, so I was able to put things together, structure things the best we could in the small amount of time we had to make sure everybody's accommodated. It's bigger than football, you know? It's bigger than football out here.
Browns rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders is a guy that is very new to Northeast Ohio.
Shedeur Sanders just ignored direct warnings from the Cleveland Browns organization. And what he did next has the entire NFL world split down the middle. When team officials told him to stay away from a devastating fire scene in East Cleveland, this rookie quarterback looked them straight in the face and said, "God told me to go," then walked right into the community anyway. While other rookies were playing it safe, Sanders was out here making moves that had his own people questioning his judgment. But here's the kicker. What he did next completely flipped the script on what it means to be a franchise quarterback. And it's got the entire NFL world buzzing about whether this kid is built different or just plain reckless, so let me break this down for you, because what just went down in Cleveland is absolutely insane, and the mainstream media isn't telling you the whole story. We're talking about a rookie quarterback who hasn't even taken his first NFL snap yet, going completely rogue against his own organization's wishes. And honestly, the more I dig into this story, the more I'm convinced that Shedeur Sanders might be the most polarizing player to enter the league in years. That here's what really happened. And trust me, this is way deeper than what you're seeing on ESPN. On June 23rd, a devastating explosion and fire ripped through the Rainbow Terrace Apartments in East Cleveland's Garden Valley community. We're not talking about a small kitchen fire here. This was a full-blown disaster that destroyed 44 units and left over 100 people homeless. One man, Cordell Sheffield, literally ran back into the burning building to save his stepchildren. He suffered severe burns and tragically died on July 10th from his injuries. Now, most NFL rookies would maybe send a check, post something on social media, and call it a day. But not Shedeur Sanders. This dude heard about the tragedy while he was out of town and immediately started planning something that would make his new team's front office absolutely lose their minds. But here's where it gets controversial, and this is the part that nobody's really talking about. According to Sanders himself, and I'm quoting directly here, "There was a lot of people who didn't want me to come down here and do it, but I don't understand why." Think about that for a second. We're talking about team officials, agents, probably his dad, Coach Prime, all telling this kid to stay away from a disaster zone in one of Cleveland's most troubled neighborhoods. And you know what Sanders did? He looked at every single person trying to protect his image and his brand and said, "God told me to come out here, so I'm never going to question his word." Let me tell you something. That takes some serious stones. We're living in an era where every athlete's move is calculated, every public appearance is PR managed, and every community event is carefully choreographed for maximum positive exposure. But Sanders threw all that out the window and walked straight into a situation that could have gone sideways in 100 different ways.
Quarterbacks on their opening day roster, and if they're not keeping all the quarterbacks, you would think that they're going to keep both the draft picks, Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, unless one of them falters terribly. So now we're down to, okay, who stick? This might be the most interesting position battle of any team anywhere in the league as training camp goes. I'm curious, Daniel, did any quarterback jump out to you during the spring?
The Garden Valley Fun Fest that Sanders organized wasn't some glossy corporate charity event either. This was raw, authentic community engagement that he put together in just 5 days. 5 days.
So I was like, nah, the first thing I do when I get back is definitely come to the community.
Sanders received a message on Instagram detailing the tragedy at the Rainbow Terrace Apartments, but rather than simply send money.
And I just wanted a day, for everybody to get out here and have some type of...
While most organizations take months to plan community outreach events, Sanders was out here moving like he was running a 2-minute drill. And here's what really gets me fired up about this whole situation. Sanders could have taken the easy route. He could have skipped the YesBYS, where all the other star athletes were getting their red carpet moments and media attention. Instead, he chose to spend his time throwing football with kids in a community that had just been through hell. But let's keep it real for a minute. The cynic in me has to ask, was this genuine compassion, Or was this a calculated move by a rookie trying to win over a fan base before he's even proven himself on the field? Because let's not forget, Sanders is walking into a quarterback room with Deshaun Watson, Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and fellow rookie Dillon Gabriel. The competition is fierce, and winning over the Cleveland community could be a strategic advantage. Here's what I think though, and this might be controversial. I don't care if there was some strategic thinking behind it. The results speak for themselves. This event brought together hundreds of people who had been through absolute trauma. Sanders didn't just show up for a photo op either. According to eyewitnesses, he was out there for hours, playing football with kids, taking pictures, getting his hands dirty. One community member who had lived in Garden Valley her entire life said she'd never seen anything like what Sanders did. She talked about how someone with his platform was able to bring the community together and provide hope during their darkest hour. That's not PR talk, that's real impact. But here's where the story takes another wild turn, and this is where I think Sanders showed his true character. Councilman Richard Starr confirmed that by the time of the event, everyone who had been displaced by the fire had been housed. So Sanders wasn't just throwing a party for people who were still homeless. He was creating a healing space for a community that needed to come together and process their trauma. Think about the psychology of what happened here. These people went through a life-altering disaster, lost everything they owned, watched their neighbor die trying to save his stepchildren, and then had to rebuild their entire lives. Sanders recognized that throwing money at the problem wasn't enough. He understood that what they needed was community, joy, and hope. And that quote that's been circulating where Sanders says, "Bigger than football," like it's bigger than football out here. That's not just some throwaway line. That's a rookie quarterback acknowledging that his role in the community extends far beyond what happens between the lines on Sunday. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. Sanders is the son of Deion "Coach Prime" Sanders, one of the most iconic athletes in sports history. He grew up in privilege, went to Colorado where his dad was the head coach, and has lived a life that most people can only dream of. So when he shows up in East Cleveland's Garden Valley community, some people are going to question whether he can really relate to what these families are going through. And you know what? That's a fair question. But here's what I observed from watching the footage and talking to people who were there. Sanders wasn't trying to pretend he understood their struggle. He was simply saying, "I see you, I care about what happened to you, and I want to do something to help." There's something to be said for that kind of authenticity. In a league where players often feel disconnected from the communities they play in, Sanders is establishing himself as someone who's going to be present, even when it's inconvenient or potentially controversial. The timing of all this is crucial too. Sanders is about to report to his first NFL training camp. The pressure is going to be intense, the competition for the starting job is real, and every move he makes is going to be scrutinized. But instead of focusing solely on his preparation, he took time to organize and participate in this community event. That tells me something about his priorities and his character. Whether you love him or hate him, you have to respect the fact that he's willing to take risks for something he believes in. Now, I've been following Sanders since his college days, and one thing that's always stood out to me is his confidence. Some people call it arrogance, but I think there's a difference. Confidence is believing in yourself even when others doubt you. Arrogance is believing you're better than everyone else. Based on what I've seen from the Garden Valley event, Sanders seems to understand the difference. He's not going into these communities acting like he's doing them a favor. He's going in with humility, recognizing that he has a platform and a responsibility to use it for good. That's the kind of leadership that championship teams are built around. But here's my prediction, and this is where things could get really interesting. Sanders' willingness to go against organizational advice and follow his own moral compass is either going to make him a beloved figure in Cleveland, or it's going to create tension within the organization. There's no middle ground here, the NFL front. Offices want control. They want predictability. They want players who stay in their lane and don't create unnecessary drama. Sanders has already shown that he's not going to be that kind of player. He's going to do what he thinks is right, regardless of what the suits in the front office want. And honestly, that's exactly what Cleveland needs. This is a city that's been through its own share of trauma and disappointment. They need someone who's going to fight for them, someone who's going to show up when things get tough, someone who understands that being a franchise quarterback means being a leader in the community, not just on the field, the way Sanders handled the Garden Valley. situation gives me hope that he might be that guy. But it also makes me wonder, how far is he willing to go? What happens when the organization tells him not to speak out about social issues? What happens when they tell him not to get involved in controversial community situations? Based on what we've seen so far, I think Sanders is going to continue following his conscience, regardless of the consequences. And that's either going to make him a legendary figure in Cleveland, or it's going to make his time there very complicated. Here's what I know for sure. The Garden Valley Fun Fest wasn't just a community event. It was a statement. Sanders was telling Cleveland, telling the NFL, and telling the world that he's not going to be just another quarterback who shows up on Sundays and disappears the rest of the week. He's positioning himself as someone who's going to be present, someone who's going to care, and someone who's going to use his platform to make a real difference. Whether that translates to success on the field remains to be seen, but it's already translating to success in the community. And at the end of the day, isn't that what we want from our professional athletes? Don't we want guys who understand that their influence extends beyond sports? Don't we want leaders who are willing to take risks to help others? Sanders is showing us what that looks like, even if it makes some people uncomfortable, even if it goes against conventional wisdom, even if it pisses off the people who are supposed to be protecting his career. The Garden Valley community will never forget what Sanders did for them. The question is, will the rest of Cleveland and the rest of the NFL appreciate having a player who's willing to put community over comfort, service over safety, and conscience over career advice? So what do you think? Is Shedeur Sanders a genuine community leader who's willing to risk everything to help others? Or is this all just an elaborate PR move by a rookie trying to win over a fan base? And more importantly, should NFL teams be trying to control their players' community involvement, or should they be encouraging more athletes to follow Sanders' example? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you want more real talk about what's really happening behind the scenes in the NFL. Because trust me, this Sanders story is just getting started, and I have a feeling Cleveland is about to get very interesting. Hit that subscribe button and let me know, Team Shedeur or Team Front Office. The comments section is about to get spicy.